In 2002, in the wake of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center, the U.S. government created a new agency, the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, operating under the auspices of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, which was also formed that year for the same general reason, to defend against 9/11-style attacks in the future. As with a whole lot of what was done in the years following the 9/11 attacks, a lot of what this agency and its larger department did could be construed as a sort of overcompensation by a government and a people who were reeling from the first real large-scale attack within their borders from a foreign entity in a very long time. It was a horrific event. Everyone felt very vulnerable and scared, and consequently, the US government could do a lot of things that typically would not have had the public's support, like completely rewiring how airports and flying worked in the country, creating all sorts of new hurdles and imposing layers of what's often called security theater to make people feel safe. While the TSA was meant to handle things on the front line of air transportation, though, X-raying and patting down and creating a significant new friction for everyone wanting to get on a plane, ICE was meant to address another purported issue, that of people coming into the US from elsewhere illegally and then sticking around long enough to cause trouble. More specifically, ICE was meant to help improve public safety by strictly enforcing, at times, laxly applied immigration laws by tracking down and expelling illegal immigrants from the country. The theory being that some would-be terrorists may have snuck into the United States and may be getting ready to kill US citizens from within our own borders. There is not a lot of evidence to support that assertion. The vast majority of terrorism that happens in the United States is conducted by US citizens, mostly those adhering to a far-right ideology, but other extremist ideologies also produce terrorists. But that has not moved the needle on public perception of the issue, which still predominantly leads towards stricter border controls and more assiduous moderation of non-citizens within US borders, for all sorts of reasons, not just security ones. What I'd like to talk about today is an offshoot of the war on terror and this vigilance about immigrants in the United States, and how during the second Trump administration, tech companies have been entangling themselves with immigration enforcement agencies like ICE to create sophisticated surveillance networks. You're listening to Let's Know Things. I'm Colin Wright. I'm able to keep this show ad-free because of support from listeners like you. If you're finding value in what I'm doing here, consider becoming a paid supporter for the cost of a cup of coffee each month at letsknowthings.com. And as a thank you for your helping me keep this show solvent, you'll receive an additional bonus More Things episode each month. All right, let's get back to the show. In mid-July of 2025, the U.S. Department of Defense signed one of its largest contracts in its history with a tech company called Palantir Technologies. Palantir was founded and is run by billionaire Peter Thiel, who, among other things, is generally considered to be the reason J.D. Vance was chosen to be Trump's second-term vice president. He is also generally considered to be one of, if not the main figurehead behind the so-called Patriot Tech movement, which consists of companies like SpaceX and Anduril and OpenAI, all of which are connected by a web of funding arms and people who have cross-pollinated between major US tech companies and US agencies, in many cases stepping into government positions that put them in charge of the regulatory bodies that set the rules for the industries in which they worked. As a consequence of this setup and this cross-pollination, the US government now has a bunch of contracts with these entities, which has been good for the company's bottom lines and led to reduced government regulations. And in exchange, the companies are increasingly cozy with the government and its many agencies, towing the line more than they would have previously, and offering a lot more cooperation and collaboration with the government as well. This has led to significant new investment in companies that produce defense technologies like automated drones and surveillance technologies, providing everything from facial recognition to license plate scanning capable systems that can be used by policing and intelligence agencies. And a great deal of that information, all sorts of data that's being aggregated by these tech companies, ends up with entities like Palantir, which aggregates and crunches all of that data for meaning and then sends its predictions and assumptions and makes services like facial recognition technologies predicated on that vast database, available to police stations and to ICE agents, among other customers. There has been increasingly stiff pushback against this melding of the tech world and the government, which has always been there. The tech industry exists in large part because of early funding and support by the US government, but it's become even more entwined than usual of late. And that pushback is international. Even longtime allies like Canada and the EU are making moves to develop their own replacements for Amazon and Google and OpenAI because of these sorts of issues, because of that cross-pollination between the government and tech industry. And that's partially predicated on fears related to the heightened unpredictability and chaos of the United States in recent years, but it's also the consequence of what these companies are doing unto themselves in terms of collecting all of this data and engaging in a whole lot of surveillance of their users. We're also seeing a lot of pushback within the United States, due in part to Trump's general mode of operation while in office, but also the on-the-ground realities in places like Minneapolis, where ICE agents have been brutalizing and kidnapping, black-bagging people, sometimes illegal immigrants, sometimes US citizens, usually non-white US citizens. And the ICE agents are being rewarded. They're getting bonuses for beating up and kidnapping and in some cases straight up murdering people on the streets, whether or not any of these people are actually criminals. And it is illegal to murder people on the streets even if they are criminals, by the way. All of which sets the scene for what happened following the Super Bowl this year. Ring is a home security and smart home device company that's best known for its line of smart doorbells, but which also makes all sorts of security cameras and other alarm system devices that connect into a mesh. Even though smart doorbells, complete with cameras and other sorts of functionality, existed before Ring, this company more or less created the smart doorbell industry as it exists today, back in 2014, when it received a round of equity investment, changed its name from Doorbot to Ring, and then it was bought by Amazon 4 years later, in 2018, for $1 billion. One of Ring's premier features is related to its camera. You can use your phone or other smart home device to see who is at your door when they ring the bell. But that camera can also be set to record when it detects movement, which makes it easy to check and see, for instance, who stole your Amazon package from your porch when you weren't home. And resultingly, Ring door camera footage has become fundamental to reporting and, on occasion, pursuing some types of crime. As a direct result of that utility, Ring introduced its Neighbors service in mid-2018. And this service serves as a sort of social network that allows Ring device users to discuss local issues, especially those related to safety and security, anonymously, while also allowing them to share photos and videos taken by their devices. This service also created relationships with local law enforcement, and it allowed police to jump onto that Neighbors network and request footage from Ring customers if they thought these doorbell cams might have photos or videos of someone escaping with a stolen car, for instance, which might then help them catch the car thief. It is generally assumed that Amazon probably bought Ring, at least in part, to further entrench itself as the lord of everything Internet of Things, as it launched its Amazon Sidewalk platform in 2020, which allowed all Amazon devices, including Ring devices, to share a wireless mesh network, connecting all of them to all the other things in that network, all of them communicating with each other and using Amazon's Alexa as an interface. In 2023, Ring was sued by the FTC for $5.8 million because it allowed its employees and contractors to access private videos by failing to have basic security and privacy features in place. So not only could any Ring employee view any of their customers' private video feeds, hackers could also easily get into this network and view all of this media and data as well. In just one example surfaced by that lawsuit, it was shown that a Ring employee viewed thousands of video recordings of at least 81 different female users over the course of just a few months in 2017. And again, that's just one of many examples of this happening that they know of. So Amazon was building a surveillance network that worked really well in the sense that it was predicated on popular, at times quite useful devices that people seemed to love, but which was also quite leaky, giving all sorts of people access to these supposedly private feeds, and it was shared with law enforcement via that social network of theirs. It's also been alleged that Ring and Amazon have used users' footage without further permission for things like facial recognition and for AI training. Their partnership with police agencies also allegedly created incentives for the police to encourage citizens to buy Ring cameras for their homes, alongside other security devices that were similarly branded and could connect to that mesh network, which created perverse incentives to expand this surveillance network. And again, all of these devices also connect wirelessly to other devices in range, which massively expands their reach and the potential for abuse when it comes to all that collected user data. In late 2025, Ring announced a new partnership with Flock Safety, a company that is best known for its security offerings, including automated license plate readers and gunshot detector systems. These are mass surveillance tools that are used by some governments and law enforcement entities, and they use cameras and microphones to capture license plates, to read people's faces, and to capture sounds that might be gunfire, and then they aggregate that data to be used by police and neighborhood associations, and in some cases private property owners. This sort of technology can be incredibly useful for companies like Palantir, which again aggregates and crunches it on scale and then shares that information with police and ICE and other such agencies. This is collecting video surveillance and audio surveillance in wide areas continuously, all day, every day. So that is a lot of data and a lot of potentially useful data, at least useful to this type of aggregation company. And these tools can sometimes help flag areas where guns are being fired or where crimes are being committed, but they are also imperfect, and at times they're biased against some people and against some areas. And some data show that not only is crime not reduced by the presence of these systems, but there's also a fair bit of evidence that this data often falls into the hands of hackers or is used by employees for nefarious stalkery purposes, as was the case with Ring's cameras. So most civil liberties groups like the ACLU and EFF are vehemently against these technologies and their deployment. But governments like the second Trump administration really like them because they create a surveillance umbrella that they can tap into and use for instance, figuring out where to deploy ICE agents, or in theory at least, to spy on political enemies or ex-spouses for abuse or blackmail purposes. Ring's late 2025 announcement was not widely reported, but in early 2026, the company bought a Super Bowl ad to announce a new feature called Search Party, enabled by their partnership with Flock. The ad showed a neighborhood coming together to find a lost dog, using the web of doorbell cameras on all their homes to track the dog and figure out where it went. All the cameras activated at once to create a surveillance mesh of live video footage. This ad landed with a resounding thud, as to many people it felt more menacing than heartwarming. The new feature overtly raising the potential that government agencies, including ICE, could tap into it to surveil and track their neighbors and neighborhood. The response was so negative that Ring quickly issued a statement saying that it was no longer moving forward with its Flock partnership, attempting to reassure its customers that, quote, integration never launched, so no Ring customer videos were ever sent to Flock Safety, end quote. This result is notable, in part because it's a rare instance of a major tech company backtracking on a major feature decision and partnership due to public backlash, but also because it suggests backlash against ICE is reverberating through other aspects of American life and interconnected industries. Ring device users mostly buy these things for their surveillance capabilities, but the increasing and increasingly hostile and violent acts committed by members of ICE seem to have nudged the conversation so that folks are more worried about these agents than about the porch pirates and other criminals that these devices and this partnership could ostensibly help them identify. Now, it is too early to say what this might mean for the burgeoning Patriot Stack of tech companies and government agencies, but it does suggest there are limits to what people will put up with, even when those in charge are adhering to a playbook that has typically worked well for them in the past, and even when the devices and services they are using to build their surveillance network are otherwise generally beloved by those who buy and use them. The book I'd like to recommend today is called Red Moon by Benjamin Percy. This is a fiction novel. I believe it's the first in the series. Here is the publisher-provided summary. Quote, "They live among us. They are our neighbors, our mothers, our lovers. They change. When government agents kick down Claire Forrester's front door and murder her parents, Claire realizes just how different she is. Patrick Gamble was nothing special until the day he got on a plane and hours later stepped off it, the only passenger left alive, a hero. Chase Williams has sworn to protect the people of the United States from the menace in their midst, but he is becoming the very thing he has promised to destroy. So far, the threat has been controlled by laws and violence and drugs, but the night of the red moon is coming, when an unrecognizable world will emerge and the battle for humanity will begin." End quote. This is, if it wasn't clear from that summary, a book about werewolves, and werewolves being a part of American society, and a civil war that took place between werewolves and non-werewolves, and what society looks like in kind of a post-9/11 sort of setting, where there are terrorist attacks being perpetrated by werewolves. Now, if any of that sounds interesting to you, consider picking up a copy of Red Moon by Benjamin Percy. Let's Know Things is a listener-supported show. I don't make any money from ads, only what listeners contribute by becoming paid supporters at letsknowthings.com. If you're not in the position to become a paid supporter at the moment, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your pods. Those help get the show in front of more people and lend a hint of credibility to independently made shows like this one. A huge thanks in advance, whatever shape your support might take.